Hi, everyone. My name's Colin Lowenberg. I'm a product marketing manager from Sumo Logic. I am excited to talk to you guys today about observability from end to end, or you can call it end-to-end observability. We're going to be diving into a live demo of Sumo Logic's dashboard and metrics and show you how to use it for a example troubleshooting scenario. So we're going to go from end to end, from a alert on a service level objective to to finding the root cause of an issue. If you're not familiar with Sumo Logic, we've got a lot of very big name customers out there. Customers that are early in their cloud migration, still on-prem but moving towards the cloud, as well as we have organizations that are cloud first and really have a strategy of building on cloud today with their modern applications. And we also have a lot of customers who like Sumo Logic, were built for the cloud and are considered cloud native. So we've got a lot of great names out there. I personally love Netflix and I fly United. So you might recognize some names there. We've got over 2,100 customers. There's more than that now today. What does Sumo Logic do for those customers? Well, we provide a way to monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot by collecting all the logs, events, and metrics into a single platform. And so what we're going to actually show you today is how we use those monitor, how we diagnose a problem, and then troubleshoot it and find the root cause. So in today's demo, before we jump into the live demo, I want to kind of set up an environment. So we built this application just to demonstrate our platform to you. We don't want to use our customers' applications. We can't use that to demo. That's very private information. So we built this application just to show you how you could run and monitor and diagnose an issue with your applications. So this application might be familiar, it's got Java, it's deployed on Kubernetes across an AWS infrastructure. Now, this specific application happens to be a payment service, and that payment service is deployed to different pods on AWS. And then that payment service talks to an account service, and that account service has an RDS database behind it that it communicates with and pulls information on people's accounts. So this is a pretty critical application, as if payments stop flowing, money stops flowing, our business is impacted. So when you talk about observability, because that's the name of this presentation, there's key elements to understand. Observability is really about reliability. And understanding the availability of your application, the performance of your application, as well as the security, all tie into that customer experience, and it all relies on reliability. So observability is being able to view all of your aspects of your application and how it affects your customer experience. So any observable application is going to transmit a lot of data, and that data is going to be just provided in metrics, logs, and traces. So let me dive into an example scenario. So I'm checking my email and I get an email. It's now 11. It's like 10:59 p.m. And I get a monitor alert. It says critical alert on payment service SLO error over 5%. So I know that I've broken one of my SLOs or service level objectives. What am I going to do? I'll scroll down in here. I can see the time range of that issue. I can see, hey, that SLO has been breached, and I have a link to look right at that alert. So I'm going to click on that alert, and it's going to take me to the Sumo Logic dashboard. Now I'm going to go full screen for you, and it's going to take me right to this page right here. This is the payment service SLO dashboard. Now, this dashboard was custom made for this service level objective, but one of the things you're going to notice if you use Sumo Logic is we have a lot of built-in dashboards or out-of-the-box dashboards. So a lot, except for this monitor alert, which we custom set up, most of the dashboards we're going to show today are actually out of the box and come with our product. So this payment service error, you can see here, there's a red line right here. That's the trend line, and it's showing that there's a threshold. And if we go above that threshold, it triggers an outlier. And the error rate is the number of errors over time. And we can see that error rate is relatively high in the last 35 minutes. It's 29% is pretty high. We're in the red, and we can even change the color of this tile based on the value of that number. And right here we can see automatically Sumo Logic calculates an outlier. An outlier shows when the issue started to get out of hand from the baseline. So I can click on that and I can see more detail. I can see that there's clearly a spike in the error rate that's occurring around this time, around 10:24 a.m. Now, if I scroll down, I can actually see a little bit more about how this error is actually impacting my business. And if you're troubleshooting an issue, one of the first things you need to understand is what's the severity of that issue, because you don't know how to prioritize. Every issue can't be a high priority issue. In this case, I can see which customers are affected here. I can see my coffee companies, my airlines are affected. I can see the location of them. Now I can contact my support team, let them know, hey, we've got some customers being affected. Maybe we want to reach out to them proactively, let them know. At the same time, I realize this is also impacting my own business. So I can see right below the transaction volume and the dollars transferred. So this is sort of that business intelligence flair that Sumo Logic gives you. Just think for a second, if your transaction volume goes down and your dollars go down, like my business is being impacted significantly. So this is an issue, I would say a P0 or P1 issue we need to resolve right away. So whether it's 3 a.m. or 10 a.m., I need to get to the root cause of this issue in the next 5 minutes, or am I going to spend the next hour trying to troubleshoot this issue? So I can see right here, I can look at all my pods. I see a lot of my pods are red, so I can't really pinpoint any specific infrastructure. This is a honeycomb view that lets me visualize all of my infrastructure. So I can see all of my pods on one screen, see if any of them are calling out to me. Doesn't look like any one of these is calling out as an issue to me. So what I want to do now is I actually want to click on one of those pods, and I can actually dive in a little bit deeper into one of those pods and see if something's going on them. But because I see this issue is occurring across so many pods, I don't actually want to look at that one specific pod. So I'm just going to click on one of the red pods, but instead of looking at that specific pod, I'm going to go up my environment. So on this tab on the right, on my infrastructure tab, I can actually go up to the environment level or the deployment level. So in this case, I want to look at my whole deployment. So let's go look at the whole deployment. And then we have these little buttons on the right. You see them repeated over and over. We have metrics, traces, logs, and entity dashboard. So we're collecting those metrics, traces, and logs from all of our infrastructure. And then I also have an entity dashboard that summarizes all of those three types of telemetry or data that we're collecting into a single dashboard. So now I click on that, and immediately it's changed my view now. Now, instead of looking at this SLO, I'm actually looking at my Kubernetes deployment view. And you can see on the left here, I'm in my mobile banking namespace, and I'm looking at my payment service deployment. I can break that down and see all of the pods in that deployment, but there's not. It doesn't seem, based on the previous, that it's not a pod based. It's not specific to one pod. There's a lot of connection errors over here on the right. So I can see there's clearly something going on. I'm in the red, actually kind of maxing out that metric over here. So I want to dive a little deeper into those connection errors, find out what's going on that's possibly causing this. And as I scroll down, I can see connection errors, connection refused, 129,000. That's quite a bit. There's also some unexpected errors right here, 29, but it's this connection refused error. I can also see it on my bar chart on the right, and I can click on that, and I can actually see, I can jump right to the logs for those errors, or I can look at my infrastructure right here, and I can see that this is actually talking to my account service. So you see the service name is account, error type, connection refused. So now we know that this actually is an error from my payment service trying to talk to my account service. And what that means is we're having an issue in the communication between the two, and we don't know what's causing that. Why am I getting this connection refused error? So rather than look at the logs for the account service or logs for the payment service, I actually want to look at the traces. Traces, if you're not familiar with them, are a type of telemetry that you collect from most modern applications, have a framework to send detailed data on every step that's happening in the application, sends out a trace, and we collect that transaction. For every transaction that occurs, we have a detailed trace of every step in the application that is occurring and the timing of it. So it's really good for looking at, traces are really good for looking at communication between two different services or timeouts that are occurring. So in this case, I want to look at that account service deployment, and I want to look at the traces from my payment service to my account service. So I don't want to go back to entity dashboard or logs or metrics. I'm going to go to traces. So I click on traces. Now I have this nice view, and you might say, well, what am I looking at here? If you're not familiar with transactional tracing, this is a distributed trace. So we have all of the services, payment service and account services and any other services are sending trace information to Sumo Logic, and we collect it all into one view of those traces. Now, each one of these I can click on right here. I'm just going to pick one at random because I don't know which one is correlating to this payment service SLO. I can try to add filters at the top, like let's say number of errors. Let's say number of errors over 5. Let's just do, and you see how I did that really easily. I didn't type in anything in. That was just click, 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 and I now have filtered it to payment service errors, talking to the account service, over 5 errors in that trace. So I'm going to click on the top one here and investigate that trace. Now in this trace view, I can actually see spans. So a span is a visual representation of a step in the payment service talking to the account service. So I see the payment service right here doing some transactions, and then it does an HTTP GET to the account service, and the account's name, get account, and then find by ID. So I can see the exact function in the application that's occurring. And I can also see, based on the color, the account service is in red and the payment service is in yellow. I can also filter to errors only, but it looks like all of these have errors. Now, I don't know where to start, but I'm going to start at the very end of the trace because that's probably where the issue is most likely to occur, because that is you can see it's going down this path and it's getting to this last part, and it's then taking 30 seconds. So the timeline at the top shows how it goes over time, and this find by ID is taking 30 seconds. It's a pretty long time. It might be timing out as well. So we can see here on the right, we can see that same infrastructure tab. It's very useful. And I can see the account service. I can see the environment. I can go up to the deployment. But in this case, I'm not looking for the wide ranging view. I just want to look at a small sample of logs. I don't need to look at my entire deployment, because that's going to be way too many logs for me to sort through. I just want to look at one pod, one entity, one account service, and I'm going to click on the raw logs now. And as I dive into the raw logs, I'm still going to get 69 pages of logs. Okay, so modern applications obviously give a lot of data, a lot of logs. It's kind of noisy. So how do you sort through all that noise? Well, I could go through manually through 69 pages and just look at all these logs from that time period. I'm looking at just this time period, that 10:39 a.m. time. And I could say, okay, well, I see some errors in here, but I don't know which error is probably the one that's causing this overload in the connection refuse. So what we have invented, or rather created for our customers, is something called log reduce. And Sumo Logic created log reduce using machine learning to match the patterns in log messages. So if you have hundreds of logs that all look very similar, it'll summarize that for you right here. So I can see right here a message at 1, 2, 3, 4 down. I don't have to read very far, and I can see unable to acquire JDBC connection with root cause, too many connections. Pretty obvious that we got a root cause screaming at us right out of the gate. That's pretty nice. And I can see right here we have 257 of these. I can click expand on that as well, so I can see it. There's not much more information. I guess that's the problem. I've got a root cause. I've got too many connections. Let's go back to my servers and configuration and increase the available connections on that RDS database. Clearly we're having trouble connecting to that RDS database from the Java database connector. Okay, problem solved. Maybe our customers are back in the green, transactions are flowing, and I've solved the day. I can go back to bed or go back to another task. But let's be real, we don't really know what the real root cause is here. This root cause is sort of a remedial root cause. I know that the cause of the connection refused is probably this too many connections, but I don't really know what's causing too many connections to occur. So how do I dive deeper into the really meaningful root cause? Like what in the code is causing this in my payment service or account service? So what we've developed at Sumo Logic is a new functionality that lets you correlate all of your metrics over time and help identify a root cause and potentially prevent issues from occurring. So I'm going to switch over now to our root cause explorer. Root cause explorer is a new tool that's part of our AWS observability solution. It's specifically built around AWS CloudTrail and CloudWatch analytics and metrics. And we take all of your metrics and pull them into this nice XY diagram with little bubbles. And if you don't like bubbles, you can also use little bars. But I like the bubble view. And on the y-axis here, you see these percentages. These crazy high percentages are actually indicating the percent drift from the trend or the typical threshold of that metric. And on the x-axis, we have time. So I can see over time, I have these different metrics drifting out of alignment. So I can see right here, 992% for 10 minutes, this RDS load was out of whack. And I can also see other errors. I see Lambda is occurring to have some latency. I see a Lambda errors happening quite a bit at certain points. And I see another RDS load. And you can see the size of the bubble shows that it's a pretty significant time frame. So 140 minutes, the RDS load was very high. Okay, so this can kind of help explain what we were seeing. We had the connection refused error. We saw the too many connections. And now looking at my root cause explorer, I see my RDS database is overloaded. Kind of makes sense. Like that's obvious. But what do I do now? Right? What can I do on this page? Well, I can zoom in on that time frame, but there's no other bubbles really correlating. Lambda latency, maybe Lambda is correlating, but it's pretty clear that this is the one bubble at the very beginning of the issue. These other bubbles, I can dive into those too, but this bubble right here is the start. It's the beginning of the issue. So I actually want to start with that first bubble, just like we were looking at the very last span in the trace. Now I want to look at the very first bubble in my root cause explorer. Now on the right, I can actually see I have a summary, and that's the same information I saw when hovering over it. I also have metrics. So this is because all of this data is coming from metrics, I can actually pull up metrics for each one of these, and I can see a time analysis comparing it to the previous time. And if I can see if there's a peak or a valley or something occurring on that view over there. As well, I can click on related and I can jump to a related dashboard. So we have these other dashboards like the MySQL dashboard or performance insights. But in this case, I want to jump into the logs for this RDS database. And so I literally just click all logs right here. And now I'm back in the logs looking for that root cause. And it's loading right now. It's sorting through a ton of log data and looking at that one specific RDS database to pull up the information and tell me, hey, what was going on the RDS database at this time when the metrics were way out of whack and we had a lot of load on the database. And sure enough, looking at that time frame, we have a slow query in our logs, and we see the actual query in here. And I can keep scrolling down, and it looks like 2 pages of just slow queries. And I can see not all the queries are exactly the same, but they're pretty similar. So it looks like there's an update inventory and a select from inventory. So I've got 2 different queries in here, and I don't have to know SQL to understand that, hey, there's a query that's occurring from the account service to the RDS database saying, hey, this is a slow query causing load on our RDS database. Now, what do I do about this? Well, I can't solve the slow query. I'm in operations. I'm the SRE. I'm not going to go rewrite the query for the payment service. But I can go contact my development team, say, hey guys, these slow queries are causing RDS database to be slow and overloaded, causing the connection refused. Please fix them. We don't want this issue to happen again. However, we all know developers are not necessarily going to fix it right away. This might be a P0 issue for me. But it's not a P0 issue for the development team. Say, handle it on the infrastructure side. Put more, money into infrastructure. But rather than do that, I can actually prevent this issue from happening by predicting these issues from occurring. So because I know what this query looks like, I can just do a query on my RDS database looking for slow queries. I can create an alert, and that alert can help me predict this from happening. So just like I had a payment service error telling me, hey, you're over 5%, I can go in and create my own alert right here. And I've already created this because I've done this demo before. But if I go in here, I can create a search that detects when I have a query time over a certain amount. And then I want to say, if I see a slow query 10 times in 5 minutes, then send me an email. And so I send an email to myself and the other SRE on my team. I say, hey, I predict your slow queries are going to be slow relative to the database capacity. This is going to cause a spike in memory usage and CPU and connection reviews. So this will prevent it from happening, and tell my other SRE that, hey, if this is happening, I've seen it before. Don't worry. Here's what to do. So now I can prevent that issue from happening without even having the development team make any changes. So I'm going to pause there and switch back to my PowerPoint deck, just to kind of point out that at the very top of that stack, we've got that that little bit of data, like, hey, what's happening is monitoring, and then diagnosing is diving in, finding where that issue is. We use traces and metrics to find that, and then troubleshooting and finding out who the owner is. Not really required using that root cause explorer to dive in and see, hey, what's the actual root cause here, and who's the service owner that can actually fix this. I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just trying to find out what's the real cause or the real root cause behind this issue. So feel free to ask questions. I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer to talk about anything you guys want to talk about. So feel free to ask questions. We also have the product manager and product expert on the call. So if you have any technical questions, I'm sure that we can answer them. So feel free to ask questions, and thank you guys for joining the presentation. So I encourage you guys to ask questions. And if you're trying to find the Q&A button, it's right in the middle of the your screen, your Zoom bar. Looks like we got one question, two questions. Great. All right, so first question, can you show us how to get the specific dashboard for the alert? So the specific dashboard for the alert, let me dive into that. So we created that dashboard for that alert specifically. So in this case, we created a dashboard for this alert, and then we created a email alert. So first you just go and create this dashboard. And dashboards are relatively easy. Basically what you do is you create a search. So I'm going to start with this one over here, since it's probably the simplest one. We wanted to calculate the max error rate, and that's sort of what our SLO is based on. So start with that first tile. Worry about all these other cool graphics later, like customers affected, but let's just focus on that SLO. So in this, we created a query that determines this number, and you can see it's even changing live on my screen because it's recalculating constantly. So in here, we're just saying, right, if you see an error, then do a sum of all the errors and divide by the total number of messages and multiply by 100 to make it a percentage, and then include that, put the max percentage that you see in a time slice and put that on this tile. And then also we're coloring this, we can change the color of this based on the values. So we can go in and change this to red, green, or yellow based on whatever settings you want. And then you just click add to dashboard. Now, another tile on here that I think is really important is the customers affected. So in this case, you could open up a search right here, and you're just saying, look for accounts where the customer, include the customer name and see if they have an error. And in this case, we are using a tag for our collector called because it was coming from one location. So we say if it's coming from this collector, and in this case, you can also see the messages. So we're just aggregating those messages and creating a table. And so we define what goes in that table by saying, count as errors, and then we have the customer ID and the ARR and the location. So we're telling it what to put in that table in the count as part of the query. So hope I'm not going too into detail. Can you show us how to get the specific dashboard for the alert? So I hope that was helpful.
Hey, Colin, could you also showcase how you can attach a dashboard to an alert?
Sure. So if I go to an alert, go to the E2E demo, and payment service. So this is the alert that we created for the payment service. And then it should link to the dashboard. You can paste this dashboard link right in here. Is that the right answer, Abhi?
Yeah, so you're able to grab the shareable link for a dashboard from any dashboard, and you can dump it into the body of the email or the notification that gets sent out. You can even templatize the variables you send in, so whether that be filter variables, time range, and that enables you to ensure that when the alert is sent out, the dashboard link is configured properly with the information about the start time and end time and what's affected. So someone that's responding to that incident, all they have to do is click on that dashboard link, and they jump right to the dashboard inside of Sumo Logic, centered around the problem that they're looking at, filtered down to whatever is actually important for them to go look at at that moment in time as well.
Thanks, Abhi. And then we also had a question from someone saying, can you explain more about how the trace is set up? How's it getting the data? So for this demo, we used OpenTelemetry, which is an open source framework, an integration that often ships with modern applications, and it came with our Kubernetes collection mechanism. And we have native support for OpenTelemetry, and we use that to send the traces to Sumo Logic's backend. And then, based on our experience, OpenTelemetry is sort of the go-to solution for most customers of ours, and it automatically sends that data to our backend, and it works across a lot of application languages as well. And if anyone's looking for the recording, you should get the recording for this the next day, as well as if you missed a presentation yesterday, you should have gotten an email today with a link to the video. All right, well, thank you guys. We're at the half hour, and I'd like to say thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, Abhi, for helping answer questions. Have a good day, guys.